Deion Sanders and the Colorado Buffaloes may have just got back their top transfer just when all hope seemed to be lost. Let's talk about it.
You are Locked On Buffs, your daily podcast on the Colorado Buffaloes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Buffs. I'm your host, Kevin Borba. I hope all of you are having a great day, and thank you for tuning in and making me part of your daily routine and part of your first listen and or watch. We are free and available every each podcast. We're brought to you by the Locked On Podcast Network, #1 sports podcast network. We're going to be talking about Ezra Christensen. He appears to be back just when we thought he was gone. He's back. Shedeur Sanders got probably the worst advice I've ever seen in the history of football from Emmanuel Ocho. I would call it career suicide if he actually listened to him, and I'm going to tell you why he should never listen to him. And then at the end there, we're going to talk about Robert Livingston. He's been, I guess, interviewing for the Dallas Cowboys role. We'll sort of see how that plays out. This isn't the first time he's interviewed for another job in the NFL. That being said, let's dive into Ezra Christensen, the saga, if you will. Ezra Christensen was someone who I was very high on from the moment the transfer portal was semi-open. And what I mean by that is when guys were flooding into the portal before it was actually open, Ezra Christensen was sort of like the guy that I really liked because he's so versatile, right? He's a guy that brings a ton of quarterback pressures, right? Last year he had 40. He was also one of the best, he was one of the best guys in college football at getting pressure on the quarterback with 28 hurries. He had 40 pressures. Like, the dude is going to get in the backfield and you can line him up wherever the heck you darn well please because he's so dang versatile. So Colorado hosts him for a visit. And I'll just give you guys the layout or the saga. Host him for a visit. He commits. And it's like, yes, dude's a team captain. He's versatile. He could do a bit of everything. Exactly what Colorado needs. And then all of a sudden, he's posting online and he's like, yeah, it was never fair. The NCAA was never going to let me play. I was like, oh, that's weird. So he didn't get the eligibility with the JUCO thing. And that's odd. And then we're seeing guys at like Miami get 8th years and guys elsewhere get like, it felt like their doctorate year, right? And it was just like this whole thing of like, why is Ezra Christensen not eligible, but some of these other cats are? And it's like, okay, so he seemed to have gone back home. And then all of a sudden he posts the other day and he's flying over Colorado. There's snow in the mountains. And it's like, oh, Ezra Christensen back in the mix. And as announced by the team on Thursday, he has signed with Colorado, which indicates that they expect him to be eligible and or he was already granted eligibility. Now, it's unclear what it really means. I think it's more so the first one, right? Because no one's officially reported that he's back, right? But multiple programs have done this. Texas just did this with an offensive lineman where he's awaiting his eligibility ruling, but they've yet to get that ruling, but they also signed him. And what I expect to happen is a local judge, or just a judge all over the place, really, is going to file a restraining order against the NCAA and whoever else would prevent a guy like Ezra Christensen from playing, right? We've seen it in basketball. The guy from Alabama, his name is slipping my mind, who has been in the G League for the past couple years and now all of a sudden is getting minutes for Alabama. I imagine it's going to be something along those lines where they just get that restraining order, obviously a little bit different, but I think that's sort of the way they're going to operate. And so it's going to be a really, really nice thing for Colorado because I'm loving their defensive line depth. According to PSFN, they grade out all the best defensive linemen in college football. Their defensive tackle impact metric, 3 of the nation's top 5 defensive tackles were not at the Power 5 level. Well, guess what? Of those top 5, 2 of them are going to be playing at Colorado next year in Santana Hopper and Ezra Christensen, right? Colorado's defensive line was by far the weakest group on the team, I would say, this past year. Them and the linebackers. It's honestly a coin flip. Depends on my mood, depends on the day, right? But Colorado's interior defense line and their defense line in general couldn't get any pressure on the quarterback. They couldn't stop the run. They weren't disruptive. If anything, they were just moved out of the way frequently, and teams were running all over them, right? Colorado's defense I think Colorado was giving up nearly 300 yards rushing per game, and that's not even an exaggeration. They were one of the worst run defenses in the country. So to have a guy like Ezra Christensen, who, I mean, veteran, experienced, and proven and hungry, right? Just literally like a week ago, Ezra Christensen thought his career was done, right? Think of the mentality that these guys have. Some of these G5 guys who have already felt like they're overlooked, right? They already feel like, hey, no one believed in me, and now I get this opportunity. For Ezra Christensen, he had the mentality, he's a JUCO bandit, which I love a JUCO bandit. So he goes JUCO, goes to Fresno State, goes to New Mexico State, and this whole time, I'm sure in the back of his head, he's like, they don't believe in me to play at this next level. He gets that chance, and then he almost has it ripped away from him because the NCAA are a bunch of Muppets, if you will. And now he has a chance to play again, it seems. And so I imagine he is not going to let this opportunity slip away from him. I imagine we are going to get Ezra Christensen at his best. And everything that we learned from Nathan Mitchell when he was on the show, it was like a week or so ago, was that Ezra Christensen is a dog. Like, he is a grinder, and you need those guys because Colorado last year, there are 136 FBS teams in college football. Colorado ranked 132nd in rush yards allowed per game at 225. The only teams that were worse were Georgia Southern, North Texas, Eastern Michigan, and UMass, right? Colorado was by far the worst Power 4 program. Rutgers was the next closest one, and they were at 217. So you need these guys to be disruptive. You need them to be playmakers. And there's a good point in the comment section right now. Defensive tackles, defensive ends that Colorado has. Colorado's defensive line, even with DJ Green, I think that 1 year, what was that, 2 years ago now, I don't know if it was as loaded in terms of potential as this year's class. Like, Colorado's transfer portal class in the defensive line, I think, has a potential to be one of the best in the Big 12. Like, Colorado led the Big 12 in sacks last year. I think they could do it again. I think they could do it again with these guys because there's a different hunger from these guys, right? These aren't Jaheim Otis's where they're former blue chip dudes who are just flameouts that failed at their first stop and they're just kind of cashing in off the cachet of being like, oh yeah, I'm a former 5-star. Oh yeah, I'm a former 4-star. No, these guys all want to prove they belong. Like, all of these guys are trying to prove like, hey, I could play at the next level, not only just the P4, but at the NFL. And this is them getting the platform that they've never had. Like, the thing that I love so much about how Deion Sanders has attacked the portal this offseason is he's going after the guys who feel disrespected, who feels underestimated, and who feels overlooked, right? And we all know that saying that I think Colorado players post frequently, and maybe it's just a common saying that the young athletes are posting these days, where it's the disrespected will be respected or whatever it is, right? Like, we all know what I'm trying to say here. These guys are going to earn their respect. And Ezra Christensen, I think, is an immediate starter for Colorado. I would be shocked if he doesn't have at least 3 to 4 sacks next year, if not more, because he's a guy that I think if you're Colorado, it's like, okay, we have a game changer. His stats this past year for New Mexico, I'm going to pull those up right now because they were impressive. Aside from the fact that he was one of the best pass rushers in college football in terms of quarterback hurries and quarterback pressures, he had 6 sacks and a forced fumble, a career high for both. The year before at Fresno State, he had 2 tackles. Year before that, he had 10, right? So Ezra Christensen has gotten better, and I'm excited for Colorado. I really hope nothing falls through. This would be a very, very huge addition for the Buffs if everything works out. When we come back, Emmanuel Acho gave Shedeur Sanders probably the dumbest advice I've ever heard. And I think the discourse around Shedeur Sanders continues to get out of hand. And I'll explain why. But first, a quick break.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kalia Butler, host of Locked On Women's Basketball, and this is Mazda's Women's Basketball Snapshot, celebrating the work no highlight reel can ever capture. The WNBA has released its 2026 schedule featuring a 44-game regular season beginning on Friday, May 8th. The league's historic 30th season includes expansion teams Portland Fire and the Toronto Tempo, with opening weekend highlights such as Caitlin Clark and the Indiana Fever hosting Paige Beckers and the Dallas Wings, and a rematch of the 2025 finals between the Aces and the Mercury. In college hoops, South Carolina handed Vanderbilt its first loss of the season with a dominant 103-74 win. These moments are earned off the clock, those long before the lights ever come on. The sweat, the fakes, the doubt, the scrapes, and coming back for more every time. Mazda puts the same drive into every detail. Wins define the moment. Putting in the work, that defines you. There's more to a Mazda because there's more to you.
Welcome back to Locked on Buffs. Hey there. Appreciate you guys for tuning in every single day, making me your first listen of the day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Make sure to like, subscribe, and follow so you don't miss out on a moment of the coverage. Let's dive into the advice that Mr. Emmanuel Acho gave Shedeur Sanders that I think would be career suicide if anyone actually listened to it. But granted, or on the bright side, I don't think anyone's dumb enough to listen to the advice he gave. By the way, got a Locked on Buffs Discord in the chat. I would love for all of you to join. It's going to be really fun. Throughout the season, we're going to have some guests pop in and out. Go to lockedonpodcast.com/everydayer. Join our Everydayer Club. For those of you who would like to know the link, lockedonbuffs.supercast.com. That's how you join. Feel free to ask me any questions there. Ask any questions to former Buff Jordan Dominic and just let me know and I'll tag him. I'm going to have some really cool guests coming on and being in the Discord. We're going to get breakdowns of just about everything from film to anything in between. So really cool, really fun. Would like you guys to join. Let's talk Shedeur Sanders. Okay. So as one does, I'm scrolling my timeline and I see a take from Emmanuel Acho that says, if I'm Shedeur Sanders, why am I listening to Todd Monken? What have you won on an NFL level? And I got to say, that is quite literally the worst advice I've ever seen. Like that's probably top 5 worst advice in my lifetime. And I'll put that up there with this one time in high school, my buddy Jake, when we were freshmen, he convinced me and a couple other guys, which I was a dummy in high school. You know, I'm like 13, 14. He convinced us that, hey, my mom's cool with it. Let's all walk to 7-Eleven on the other side of town at 3 a.m. And I was like, you know what, Jake? That's a great idea. Like, of course. And you know what? Our moms did not think it was a great idea. Like, this is that level. This is Jake telling me to go to 7-Eleven at 3 a.m. level of bad advice. And it was just atrocious. It really was. It was so bad because you think of all of the things that Shedeur Sanders has had to deal with, right? You think of the fact that, one, his dad's shadow has been cast over him. A lot of people have said that his dad's sort of fame hurt him when he was trying to get drafted, and then his attitude hurt him. Like, everything about Shedeur Sanders has just been difficult, and it's not his doing, right? I feel like that's the hard part is Shedeur Sanders isn't necessarily doing any of these things. It's just people, they want to speak on him. And a guy who had a cup of coffee in the NFL, I'm not going to take that away from an Emmanuel Acho saying, like, don't listen to your coach because what has he proven? How does that help Shedeur Sanders, the 5th round pick, who, although he's a Pro Bowler, and I know that really didn't help a lot of the hatred that he gets anyway. I thought Shedeur had some bright moments. I'm going to say this. Do I think he should have been a Pro Bowl? I don't know. Probably not. Like, I'm sure other names could have been picked, but the Pro Bowl is a shell of its former self. Who really cares? But it's still an opportunity for him to get better. That being said, Shedeur Sanders is a 5th round pick, not really the guaranteed starter, and he's fighting for a career in the NFL. And your advice to him is to ignore his head coach, who is in a way also trying to prove he belongs in the NFL as a head coach because it's his first time as a head coach. The dude was calling plays at Georgia like 4 years ago. And so for Emmanuel Acho to be like, yeah, don't listen to him because what has he done? What have you done? Why are we listening to your football takes? You didn't accomplish anything in the NFL, right? That's the sort of mentality where it's like, sometimes I feel like these people who give takes are just like making things up, going, you know what? What is gonna upset people the most? Or like, what is gonna just make the most shockwaves because people are gonna be so baffled that I said that? Like, that is how that take comes off to me. Like, why would you give that advice to Shedeur Sanders? What does he gain from that? What does he gain from ignoring his coach as a guy who isn't proven, right? You know, the quarterbacks who can ignore their coach and get away with it, I could count them on this hand. Mahomes, Allen, Herbert, probably Lamar, and oh geez, like I could be missing someone, like maybe Drake May. Like, maybe 5 people in the NFL could just tell a coach, hey, I don't really care what you have to say. And Shedeur Sanders is not one of them, right? Shedeur Sanders is fighting for his career. And for Emmanuel Acho to use Shedeur Sanders' name to fire off a take this idiotic is disrespectful. It's irresponsible. And it's quite frankly just stupid, right? That take offers no real insight. I think that's the hard part about so many of these athletes these days having shows or podcasts or whatever. I mean, everybody has a podcast. I have a podcast, right? But that's sort of the downside to it, is like you're just getting these irrational thoughts where it's like, yeah, dude, tell your coach to fly a kite and go do your thing. And it's like you're acting like Shedor's a 5-time MVP. He may not even be the starting quarterback for the Browns next year. Like, what are we talking about? So terrible advice. If I was asked for Shedor Sanders, if Shedor Sanders said, hey, Kev, really value your opinion, and I know you went to 7-Eleven at 3 a.m. that one time as a freshman in high school, and it really didn't like work out for you. What would your advice be? Like, if that's what Shedor said to me, I'd be like, you know what, Shedor? First of all, he already did the best thing possible, I thought, by reposting the hiring of Todd Monken and showing like, hey, I'm excited. But if I'm Shedor Sanders, I'm hitting up Monken as soon as possible and be like, hey, let's work on this playbook. Then I'm gathering my receiver corps, or at least in the case of the Cleveland Browns, what they call a receiver corps, and be like, let's work on this playbook together. Let's get to it. Like, I am sort of forcing my way into a leadership role, and that's okay. Like, I know a lot of people are going to be like, he doesn't have to force his way. He doesn't, right? Shedor Sanders, I think, has won over the locker room in some degree. That being said, I think going the extra mile helps him. This attitude of like, I don't need your help is like stupid, right? If Shedor Sanders was doing that in college, I could be like, okay, maybe. Like, he doesn't need your help. He's fine. He's a really good college quarterback. But this is the NFL. This isn't La La Land. Like, wake up, Emmanuel Acho, and honestly, turn the mic off. That was terrible, right? Why would Shedor Sanders ever do that? That's career suicide for someone who's not really guaranteed a career in the NFL. We're going to take another quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk about Robert Livingston interviewing for the Cowboys job. Should we be worried? I think kind of, but I'll explain why. This episode of Locked On Buffs is brought to you by our sponsors over at Rocket Money. Let's be real. Managing your finances can feel overwhelming between subscriptions you forgot about, bills that keep going up, and trying to figure out where all your money actually goes month in and month out. It's easy to feel like you're losing control, and who has time to track every transaction or hunt down hidden fees? That's where Rocket Money comes in, the personal finance app that helps you take control. It finds and cancels your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you could grow your savings. I mean, I'm a first-time homeowner. I'm paying for a wedding. Life's expensive. And every few $100 goes the extra mile. Like, I need to know, like, hey, like $100 at a wedding, like that's a table. That's a person, right? That's a person. And me being subscribed to a streaming platform that I forgot existed that cost $100 a month doesn't do me any good. And Rocket Money helped me figure that out. So let Rocket Money help you figure out your financial goals faster. Join at rocketmoney.com/lockedon. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon. rocketmoney.com/lockedon. Welcome back to Locked On Buffs. I appreciate all you guys for tuning in, making me your first listen of the day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts. So make sure to like, subscribe, and follow so that way you don't miss out on a moment of our coverage. Let's talk Robert Livingston. I think he burst onto the scene in year one. So 2024 for him was really good. And I was like, yeah, this guy gets it. And I'm not going to say that he doesn't get it. I will say this year was a step back. And I will say that there's definitely been some murmurs of disagreement between him and Coach Prime about how much man they're going to play and all this jazz. And like, can Robert Livingston actually control the defense, or is he able to call a defense within the parameters of what Coach Prime wants? Listen, I think Robert Livingston with a good group of players could be a very good defense coordinator in college football, right? Colorado led the Big 12 in sacks last year. He had DJ McKinney playing well enough to garner first round sort of chatter in the offseason, and then all of a sudden it kind of fell off a cliff. And I think a lot of the issues that Colorado's defense had, you could point, I don't want to say point fingers, but a lot of the blame can be assigned to the coaches who got demoted, right? Like, they're not developing, they weren't doing what they needed to do. So I think Robert Livingston has a chance to be really good. That being said, Todd Archer reported the following coaches were in person for an interview for the defensive coordinator job: Arizona corners coach Ryan Smith, Ravens defensive coordinator, or former Ravens defensive coordinator Zach Orr, and Colorado defensive coordinator Robert Livingston. Robert Livingston is an NFL guy. Would it shock me if he wants to go back to the NFL? No. I feel like, he spent, 12 years in Cincinnati. It wouldn't shock me if he wants to go to the NFL. Would I be concerned to lose him at this time? Of course, right? You love the continuity. I don't know. His defense wasn't stellar enough this past year for guys to be like, I came to Colorado solely to play for Robert Livingston, but I do think he brings a lot of value to the table. That being said, the one thing that I didn't love that Coach Prime did when he hired Robert Livingston, or any of his defense coordinators for that matter, is he didn't necessarily let them bring in their guys, right? So Coach Prime's defensive staff has always just been guys who he likes, and same thing with the offense for the most part. It's guys he likes, and then you sort of operate with those guys. And it's like, okay, well, I don't care if you don't like my corners coach. He was with me at Jackson State, and he's with me at Trinity. I don't care if you don't like my linebackers coach, who's never coached in college before. He's coached at Trinity and Jackson State, right? Like, he sort of had these guys in place already. And so it would be tough to replace Robert Livingston, but at the same time, the infrastructure would still be the same. You would just have to find someone whose playbook you trust. And at this point in time, with the coaching cycle all pretty much wrapped up, I think that's where it'd be difficult. And I do think Coach Prime would probably go back into the NFL route. I do. I think he likes NFL style coaches. I think him finding a coach, because I think the thing that he's done well this offseason is hire position coaches who can recruit well. So that sort of gives him room to kind of mess around and maybe bring in an NFL guy who doesn't have a ton of experience, because the people around him will help him recruit. So Robert Livingston in the mix for the Cowboys job. I don't know if Robert Livingston's going to leave this year. I do think Robert Livingston's going to get a calling back to the NFL. Based on what I've been told about him, is the NFL is where he wants to be, right? I think college football has provided him a larger opportunity to be a defensive coordinator, and he wants to do that again. But I think his next move will probably be to the NFL. Whether or not it's the Dallas Cowboys, I don't think so. I think the Dallas Cowboys probably want a little bit more NFL experience than a guy like, and I say NFL experience in terms of a guy who has called plays before, right? Robert Livingston hasn't called plays at the NFL level. So Robert Livingston interviewing for the Cowboys. I'll keep you guys updated. I don't think it's going to lead to anything, but I'll make sure to keep you guys updated every step along the way. I appreciate all you guys for tuning in. To make sure, I appreciate all you guys for tuning in, making me your first listen of the day. Sorry, I had a total brain fart right there. My dog was doing something weird in the background. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast. Make sure to like, subscribe, follow, join the Discord if you haven't already. LockedOnBuffs.supercast.com. We could talk about all these things. I'll tell you guys the latest on what I know. I'm going to have some other collaborators join the forum as well, and we'll be talking. Jay Smith is in there. He's been on the show a couple times, and it's really fun. We're going to have a lot of fun in there. Appreciate all you guys. And I hope all of you have a great Thursday evening. I will see you guys again tomorrow. This has been Locked on Buffs.